Hello, Westlake Fantasy Football League. I will be doing a presentation, part one. Trevor will handle part two of fantasy lessons learned and the fantasy review and preview, like the off-season analysis, right? So I've prepared a document and I'm going to be talking about some mistakes I've made and lessons I've learned. All right, let's start with number one. And I have like 11 or 12, 13. Okay. Number one is the Martavis Bryant, Juju Smith-Schuster, AJ Green, T. Higgins rule or lesson. What you want to happen versus what is happening. Okay, so once upon a time, I drafted Martavis Bryant in like the fourth round, and my logic was, well, Antonio Brown is going to be getting a bunch of coverage, and somebody on that Steelers offense is going to be a good number two wide receiver. And I thought it would be Martavis Bryant. And it ended up being Juju Smith Schuster in week one. Like Martavis had like a terrible week, and I think he had like drug problems. And Juju was undrafted in fantasy, and he was a rookie, and he had like 7 catches. And I shook it off. I was like, oh, whatever. Like, I want Martavis to be the guy. And then it happened again the next week and the next week, and I was just stubborn about it. And it ended up being like that the entire season. Like, Martavis Bryant was completely useless, and Juju was like a wide receiver 1 or 2. And after the year, I looked back on it and realized, like, even though I didn't know who Juju Smith-Schuster was, I should have immediately recognized that what I thought and what I wanted to happen is not happening, and I need to adjust to what it, like, I was paying more attention than anyone else. I could have easily scooped up Juju and then switched them out, because that was the team I was watching, and it was just a horrible decision. So that's the Martavis Bryant lesson. And then last year, same thing happened to me with AJ Green, where I drafted AJ Green relatively high, thought maybe he's good still. He was terrible week one, and T. Higgins was like a monster. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I want AJ Green to be my guy. But I remember what happened with Martavis and Juju, so I'm just going to add T. Higgins. Like, I'm just going to add him, and, we'll see. And then, sure enough, as the weeks went on, it became obvious that T. Higgins was the guy, and AJ Green was terrible. And so I just started putting T. Higgins into my lineup. Even if the ratings disagreed, I would just be like, nope, like, I don't care what people want to have happen. I'm just going to deal with what is on the field happening. And T. Higgins was a monster all year. So that's the lesson, is you got to adapt and just forget about what you want to happen or what you think to happen. That's lesson number one that I've learned. All right, lesson number two is a recent lesson. It's be patient. Don't trade because of your record in a redraft league. Trade because it makes your team better. Now, the reason I say redraft league is because in a dynasty league, it might make sense to, if you have a losing record, trade like a Julio Jones for like a DeAndre Swift or somebody who's good right now for someone who's going to be good later, like those types of trades, or like for draft picks, whatever. But in a redraft league, I started 0-3 last year. I loved my draft. It was my favorite draft I've ever had. I had everyone I wanted. It went perfectly from my perspective. And my team was just losing. And I panicked, and I made two terrible trades. And they weren't objectively good. They were just desperate. I was just like, I need to win. I can't wait any longer for my plans to come to fruition. Like, J.K. Dobbins was going to gain in value. Rob Gronkowski was going to get better. Maybe not, though. That's why I was worried. But they started out so bad that I had to trade J.K. Dobbins for Jonnu Smith, who ended up being terrible. And A.J. Brown was hurt in the beginning of the year, and I didn't know what was going to happen. So I traded him for Odell, and I also gave away Aaron Rodgers. And it was just a terrible, terrible trade. So I would say next year and in the future, even if I'm 0-4, I'm not going to make a trade that I myself think the other person is getting more than I'm getting substantially, just because I need to win that week. And I did win that week. Like, I got Odell and I won that week, but it's not worth it because by the end of the year, it just, I didn't have enough ammo to back up the loss of A.J. Brown and Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so, and J.K. Dobbins. Okay, so number 3, don't be afraid to reach for guys you like. Okay, and I put A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and also Tyreek Hill comes to mind. One year, they were saying, oh, Tyreek Hill, he's like, a one-trick pony, or, oh, DK Metcalf, he's a one-trick pony. Like, they're just really fast. Like, as if that's a bad thing. Like, no. And I will take a guy like a Tyreek Hill or a DK Metcalf or an A.J. Brown way ahead of where they're supposed to go because their upside is high enough to justify that. Like, I got A.J. Brown in the 3rd and DK in the 4th, and they were both reaches. Like, if you put my team into a computer, it will say my team's the worst because I reach more than anybody else. But the truth is, by the end of the season, like going into this year, they're both top 6 wide receivers on ESPN right now. And I got them in the 3rd and 4th round. And like someone like Justin Jefferson would be a good example maybe next year. Just reach, just take them. And then you have Justin Jefferson. Like, it doesn't matter the order they say people will finish. Like, take the guys you like that you think have room to grow and absurd upside. And so do not take someone just because they're ranked higher. Like, take the guy that you like, you want to watch, you believe in, and reach as far as you want. Kareem Hunt was in the 5th round. He was an RB1. I love Kareem Hunt. I would take him anywhere. I still think he's undervalued. Just take the player you want, Much better than taking the player that you think you're supposed to take and then him having a bad year. That's awful. Okay, so don't be afraid to reach. Okay, number 4 is Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers are good at QB. I don't know why they're so undervalued, but they just are. So I'll just move on. Have a backup plan if there are red flags at your position. Okay, this is an important one. Like Kyler Murray, he needs a backup QB for the end of the year. And I would also put Lamar Jackson in that conversation. If you are drafting a mobile quarterback for his mobile ability, I think you should also draft a backup quarterback who you like and who's good, because Kyler is QB1 until he twists his ankle, and then he's like QB15 because he doesn't know how to play quarterback. So you have to have like a Tom Brady to back him up, or somebody who knows how to play quarterback. And Gronk, I made a mistake. Like, I just drafted Gronk thinking, whatever, I'll be fine. And no, because he was coming off a retirement and he was terrible in the beginning of the year, and I lost a multitude of games because of Gronk. Whereas by the end of the year, he's catching 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and can't be guarded, and he's the best player on the field, basically. But in the beginning of the year, he was terrible. So I should have known that, and I should have drafted 2 tight ends and not started Gronk until he started going off in the middle of the season. So if there's a player you're getting who has significant downside, you got to cover that up. Okay. Also, lesson number 6, pick up rookies before they do anything. Sounds obvious, but my point is, scout players that are already on your team. Like, put them on your team even if you know nothing about them, and let them play and watch the game. his highlights, because by the time they go off, if they're not already on your team, this was especially important to me last year because I had $0 in the whole season because I spent $100 on Dallas Goedert in like week 1 to cover up the Gronk mistake I made, and then he broke his ankle the next game. So I had no money, and um I had to. But this rule is good for any amount of money. You have to have a guy like Brandon Ayuk on your bench. He's the perfect bench player because in the beginning of the year, because you don't start him, but on your bench you don't want to have worse starters. You want to have guys who can become starters, guys who are going to be hot commodities if they go off, like a Brandon Ayuk. Okay, so I'll put a Brandon Ayuk on my bench before he ever does anything. And then all of a sudden he hurdles over the moon and he's on ESPN all night long. And other people are like, oh, like, where's Brandon Ayuk? Oh, he's on Max's team. Like I already have him. I don't have to bid any money on him. He's just mine. And if he doesn't leap over someone when he plays, then I would be able to drop him. You know, like some guys are good, some guys aren't, and there's no way to tell until it's too late. So you have to have your bench full of players who you're watching and scouting. You don't scout and then add a guy. You have to add him first and then scout him. That's how I see it anyway. Okay. Rule number 7, lesson number 7. What happens in week 1 sometimes keeps happening all year long, like James Robinson last year. People say they overreact to week 1, but no. Like I said with the Juju Smith-Schuster or the T. Higgins, sometimes week 1 it's just right in your face that this player you drafted is going to have a terrible season and this player that was undrafted is going to have a great season, and you have to adjust. Like, don't worry about overreacting. I say it's the real deal week 1 a lot of the time. Okay. Number 8. This one is super important. Add RB depth before completing your starting lineup. This rule is for beginners. Okay. If you wait until you have your lineup set to add RB depth, there won't be any good backs, and then one of your backs will get hurt and you'll have no good replacement. So this is what pretty much separates the experienced fantasy player from the novice fantasy player. A novice will just fill up his lineup, like draft quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, wide receiver for a flex, and then they'll be like, okay, I need to add RB depth. What RBs? Well, who's the best RB available? Oh, okay, it's James White, or oh, it's Nyheim Hines or Tariq Cohen. Like, good luck. Like, I actually like Nyheim Hines this year, but you're gonna be screwed if you do that. Like, you're just gonna be screwed because running backs get hurt and they're impossible to replace. So you have to draft 3 to 4 great running backs in your first 6 or 7 picks, because if you don't, you're just going to be completely screwed because they're irreplaceable. Like last year I took I took Chubb and Mixon in the first 2 rounds, so I have my running backs. But I also took Hunt because I needed the handcuff and I like the player. And I also took J.K. Dobbins. I took J.K. Hunt in the 5th, J.K. Dobbins in the 6th. And my logic with Dobbins in the 6th or whatever I took him was, I'm not taking a quarterback yet. Like, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are down here. And I need to add depth so that when Joe Mixon gets hurt, I can replace him with Dobbins. And my plan ended up not working because I traded desperately like an idiot. But the draft was good. I had a good draft. And I know how to draft. And you have to think long term, and you have to have running backs that are good, because there's just no good running backs in the back half of the draft. So you have to go real heavy on RB early, in my opinion. And That's what beginners don't get is they'll draft like a Christian McCaffrey and then he'll get injured and they'll struggle at RB2 all year long. And it's like, dude, like you have to draft like even before you flex a wide receiver, like let's say you go double wide receiver, double running back, and now it's the fifth round. Before you get your third wide receiver, like a Julio Jones, who you're gonna flex or somebody, you have to grab uh, a David Montgomery. You just have to. Like it's stupid not to because in the next round there will still be a good receiver you can flex, but there won't be any good running backs. And even if your optimal lineup is benching Kareem Hunt or David Montgomery or whoever Raheem Mostert, whoever your RB like 3 or 4 is, even if the best case scenario you're benching them, you still need to draft them first because they're gonna be gone. Like teams are gonna be like I said, oh I need an RB now. Let's squeeze one in here. Man, does that separate good players from bad players? Is RB depth in the draft? Okay, so number 9. QBs and wide receivers are the easiest things to replace. You look at last year, like a Justin Herbert. If you draft Patrick Mahomes and you have like a solid team, a Justin Herbert is going to pop up and be the offensive rookie of the year. This happens every single season. There's going to be some awesome new quarterback who nobody drafted. It happens literally every season. Like, it never doesn't happen. And you're not going to be able to capitalize on that because you spent on Patrick Mahomes in like the second round. And so adding Justin Herbert does nothing for your team. So you're going to miss out on every single Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. Like, you're just going to not be able to benefit from that at all. And good luck trying to find, like, Justin got lucky with James Robinson last year. Good luck trying to find, like, a situation like that. It's much easier to find a Justin Herbert than a James Robinson. So drafting a Patrick Mahomes it just makes you unable to upgrade quarterback for the whole year. Whereas if I draft Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers in the 12th, maybe I can still, I mean, they happen to be the best already, but maybe I can still grab a Herbert and get better, easily. I think Trevor does that really well with he'll have a great team and then get like a Colin Kaepernick at the last second, puts him over the top, or an RG3. Okay, so and then you just have an impossibly good roster all of a sudden. And you can't do that with Patrick Mahomes in the second. So draft QBs late and try to upgrade them. And also wide receivers, I mean, I honestly, this year, just to prove a point, I might draft 6 running backs in a row in the first 6 rounds. Because in the 7th round, I'm still going to get a receiver who's going to compete with your wide receiver 1. Like, let's say you take Devontae Adams and I go RB. Then I can take my 7th round wide receiver who's like maybe a rookie, Devonta Smith, who's like doing well. Maybe he's the wide receiver 1 of the Eagles, and I can either just use him and go toe to toe with your Adams. I mean, that's a stretch, but I could at least combine him with one of my RBs to trade for a Justin Jefferson or something. My point is, there's just so much value in the 7th and 8th rounds at wide receiver, and there's almost none for a running back in that range. So you might as well just go running back early and then the rest of your team. Like, you'll have to bench some of those running backs, but believe me, they'll have plenty of opportunities to start because of the nature of the position. Okay. Number 10. Spend highest draft picks on people who are already good, not people who might be good. Monte Ball and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are examples. So let's say it's the first round or the early second round, and you can take that hot new rookie who's never played in the NFL, Sometimes it works with like a Saquon Barkley if he's like a generational talent. But if he's just a good running back, like not great, but pretty good, and he's in the perfect situation with a great quarterback, do not waste a second round pick on him or a first round pick on him, because it doesn't necessarily translate to success. And you're picking him over somebody like who's already good. Like Alvin Kamara was drafted in the third round to a crowded backfield, but he's already good. Like we know that he dominates in the NFL, and it's ridiculous to not draft him. And he might be too good of an example, or too high of a draft pick, but somebody like Calvin Ridley, we know that Calvin Ridley can go off and catch 3 touchdowns and be unguardable and be the wide receiver 1 on the week or the season for a portion of time. So why would you even think about taking? Even he's too high. Let me think. I don't know. Just don't waste your time with what might be in the first 2 rounds when you can draft what is already amazing. Like, you know what I mean? Do not take a Clyde Edwards-Helaire or over a Nick Chubb, or take a whatever. Take a what was the other guy? Monte Ball over like DeMarco Murray or whatever it was that year. Just don't do that. Okay. In later rounds, you can start speculating. Okay. Like Antonio Brown was undrafted, and he's like the best receiver ever. So draft capital doesn't mean as much as proven success in the NFL, even though I like rookies. Okay. 11. Ignore weekly rankings. The rankers are extremely stubborn. They won't admit that DK Metcalf is better than Tyler Lockett until it's too late. Like, if you hypothetically had both of those players on your team last year, the rankings for like the majority of the season would be like, oh, Tyler Lockett and then DK Metcalf. No, DK Metcalf was eating him alive. Like, he was like the wide receiver 1, and Lockett was like terrible with like one good week. Like, Raiders are stupid, and they're stubborn, and they don't adjust quickly enough to help you and your team, in my opinion. They're going to adjust after the fact. Like, it's always going to be retroactive. Like, okay, now that Tyreek Hill has finished as the wide receiver 1, we can start ranking him, recommending you draft him. It's like, when Tyreek was the wide receiver 1, I got him in the 4th round, which was a reach. And then I would start him, even though they told me not to. He was literally the best player. And it's like, how long did they take to rank Aaron Rodgers as the top-ranked quarterback for a week, even if he's very clearly the MVP after like week 1? He's clearly the best quarterback that like last year. Like, I didn't even try to trade him. I tried to trade Brady, but I was like, whatever, it's a coin flip. Okay, so they both won their own version of MVPs. That's another thing about Tom Brady. If Tom Brady wanted to get the most fantasy points, he would have the most fantasy points. He happens to be trying to win a Super Bowl, and his fantasy points are like consequential. But the type of person that he is and competitor that he is, there's no doubt in my mind he would be the number 1 fantasy player if that was what he was trying to do. I can't recommend him enough, especially with the weapons he has right now. Okay. Like again, they won't admit it. Like if I have Brandon Ayuk on my team and he's dominating every week, the Raiders, the weekly rankings will leave him out of the top 25, even if he's a wide receiver 1. And they'll say start like Tyler Lockett or like guys who were good a year ago. And it's like, no, dude, like they take too long to adjust. Like, you cannot go off of weekly rankings are so stupid. Every single week is like ranking the week before, and none of it is projection, which is what you need. And it just pisses me off, those guys, because they just take so long to adjust to reality. Like by the time they recommend you start T Higgins and Brandon Ayuk, it's too late. Like you have to have already been starting them. Number 12. Okay, where does my football knowledge come from? It comes from watching the Browns. And the Browns were the worst team of all time until like last year, maybe 2 years ago. They won 6 games, which is like a lot for them. They were the worst team of all time. And I watched them only and only them. So I would watch teams play against the Browns, and I would watch the Browns play teams and some playoff games and stuff. And I have a really good understanding of what makes a team bad and what makes a team not bad. And it's the quarterback. That's what it is. It's the quarterback and his ability to convert on third down. That's all that matters in football. If I promise you, if you have a quarterback that, because things are going to happen during a drive. Almost every single drive at one point is going to end in like 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 12. Like there was a hold or there was a dropped pass or there was a run up the middle that got stuffed. And it's up to the quarterback to either fuck up and punt, which means you don't get any fantasy points for anyone on that entire team, or he's going to like scramble like Russell Wilson or Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield complete a 15-yard pass. Tom Brady, Andrew Luck was like the master at this. If you can convert third down, every single player on your team is going to have fantasy success. And if you can't, they're all going to have a terrible, terrible time. Unless you're a complete ball hog like a Christian McCaffrey or a David Montgomery when Tariq Cohen gets injured. You have to have players on teams with quarterbacks who can convert on third down. It's really that simple. You need to keep your guy on the field. So if I have DK Metcalf, I like DK Metcalf, but if his quarterback was Jared Goff, I wouldn't like DK Metcalf. I wouldn't. It's all about Russell Wilson like dodging traffic and completing it to him on third down or 4th down and goal. Like that's what it's about. So 100%, if you don't understand football, if you're like a hockey fan or some other type of fan, like I promise you, it comes down to if your quarterback can convert on third down or not. That's all that matters in the NFL. So think about that when you're drafting a player. Like Chris Godwin this year would be an excellent pick because Tom Brady is going to convert on third down. Those drives are going to last like 6 minutes, and 2 of those passes are going to go to Godwin, and 1 of them might be a touchdown. Like anyone on the Bucs is a great pick this year. Anyone on the Chiefs is a good pick. Anyone on the Ravens is a good pick. Like if your team is good at driving the ball, that's first and foremost what matters. Like I don't care. Like I even did deep learning on fantasy football, and where the computer teaches itself how to determine if a player is a bust or a breakout, bust or a start, whatever. I didn't even program it into the computer. The computer determined by itself if your team scores more than 30 points per game on average, start them. And it was stupid. It was inhuman because there are bad players on great teams, but the computer taught itself immediately to be able to rank things effectively with the data I gave it and predict future success. The number one criteria it looks for is how many points does your team score per game, your NFL team. And then it looks for like how many touches and things like that. But yeah. So that's what's important is does your team have a good offense? All right. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. All right. 13, last lesson. or I guess I'm just teaching at this point. There are lessons that I've learned, but whatever. Okay, draft great players whose stock is down if you disagree with the reasons why they're down. Like you should examine why. Like last year, I came into the league, I had taken a year off, and I saw that Aaron Rodgers was undrafted or like last round. And I was like, okay, why? And they're like, oh, because, he had a bad season last year in his first year learning a new offense. And I was like, and what else? Like, why are you not drafting Aaron Rodgers? Like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, if think about it this way, if a new quarterback comes into the NFL and the announcer says, "Wow, that guy plays like Aaron Rodgers," that's like the highest compliment. Like he is the best. So if you see a guy like that who's not being drafted in fantasy, but he's the best, you need to examine why is he not being drafted? Oh, it's a run-heavy offense. Like, no, you're an idiot. Like Ryan Tannehill can hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill will have great quarterback stats because the defense is going to try to stop the run. And it's like only an idiot it thinks in like one-dimensional things like, oh, Aaron Rodgers isn't good anymore because they like to run the ball. No, no, no. When they figure out how to get Aaron Jones going, it's going to make it easier for Aaron Rodgers to convert third down. If Aaron Jones is getting 5 yards a carry, it's going to be easier for Aaron Rodgers to get fantasy points. That's what people don't get. Is it's not one or the other. It's you're good or you're a good offense or you're a bad offense. Has nothing to do with whether you run, pass. All that is nonsense. If you look at the Browns, they're a run-heavy team. I guarantee you Baker Mayfield is a top 12 QB next year. And if you watched any Browns games, you would see that teams would try to stop Nick Chubb and Baker would have like 4 touchdowns in like the first half. A lot of times. Like he actually played really well last year. That's just how it works. It's about converting on third down, being a good offense, seeing things ahead of time, ignoring the whatever. You guys get it. So I'm gonna send this to Trevor, have him spice it up, give it some production value, and I'll pass it off to you, Trevor. Thanks, guys.